Hello and welcome to this 5-minute short on units. So obviously units are important. It'll make a mess of your calculations if not. And if you've heard or used Perl or heard some of the 5-minute shorts, you'll see that Perl handles units quite instinctively and quite nicely. But I want to do a little video just to explain it a little bit more, just to make sure people are aware of how to set it and the features. So this is the Adrian 6-second guide model, nothing too exciting about that. But if you run yours, very possibly yours pressure says bar absolute, not bar gauge. So how have I got mine into bar gauge? Well, what I did, I went to my options up here. I went to units, and then I can play about and change the units for this particular model. So if I wanted it in British units, go back to the good old PSI and all that kind of good stuff, I can press OK, and then suddenly you can see the outlet pressures in PSI, and they'll be PSI absolute. Not that that's going to make an awful lot of sense to many of us anymore, so we're going to go back, and then we've got these different options. So you can have SI, so you can have it in pascals, lots and lots of numbers. Pascal's really too small, so the engineering is this sort of strange sort of SI unit set we have in the UK. A couple of strange ones, and we have bar, degree C, those kind of good things. And then we could actually go in and amend these. So I could say, actually, I want that bar gauge, so I prefer bar gauge. But another way of doing this, if I go back to engineering, is I've got my default. I can press default and you see bar gauge appears there. So I'll come back to a second of how to do that. But fundamentally, for a model, so what I'm doing here is changing the set of units I'm going to see in this model. And it's no more complicated than that. So we're now into Pascal's absolute. Now I might want, when I create a new model, for everything to default to bar gauge, my preferred set of pressure units. So to change your default set, what you need to do to go over to this side over here, go to the options, and then you get this little box here, very similar. But I'm going to go to engineering. I'm going to type in bar gauge in there. And what that has done, if I press OK, that is my default set now of units for Adrian. So when I open up a model, do some work in it, it will be in bar gauge. And it's no more difficult than that. So that is Flownet, Piper, Adrian, all the same. Now you might be in FizzPack. Very, very similar. A nuance or two you can have in FizzPack. So again, we go to a little options tab, we go to units, we can see all the description, all the units there, and again, you've got SI units, you've got engineering, you've got British. You can have it in molar units if you want, or you can have it in mass units. Normally we have it in mass units, and normally I'm in engineering. So that's where I would start. But again, I might want to have my own default set, and again, particularly pressure, I don't like bar absolute, I want bar gauge. So I can type that in, I can change these. I might suddenly decide that I much prefer my temperatures in Kelvin. I could have my lengths in furlongs if I wanted to. But if I want to see that each and every time, I can actually save that as a default. So I'll put this back to C, because I don't want my default in K. But I can say save that as my default. It will say, do you want that as the application default? And we could press yes, and there you go. I've got the default set. But what you can also do is you can save these as different types of sets. So we've got these ones here, SI, Engineering, British, but you could create your own set, save them, and then bring them back in. So we go and get units from files. You can see there the British Engineering SI unit one, that's the unit one. But I could create a whole new different version. I could create a set of units called Fred, and then save it, and then open it, and we'd have those different sets. Obviously, Fred does not exist at this point, but if I'd saved it as Fred, I can then get it as Fred. So we can do that as well in FizzPack. So Very, very similar, just a smidge different. The last application I want to talk about is Capri. Now with Capri, we need to be a little bit more careful. With all the PEL programs, the native PEL programs, I can play about with those units at any point, and it will change, the values and understand you've changed the unit. Because Capri is in Excel, it gets a little bit more interesting. So before you open up a Capri sheet, you can do the units of measure, and you can say, I want all my pressures to be in bar gauge. And again, you've got that concept of getting used from files. You can save the unit. So you can create those unit sets just like we've just seen in FISPack. So I'm going to press OK. But that's kind of set the default. Then I would open up my sheets. I can't do it the other way. Once I've got sheets open, I've started using it. If I change the units of measure, these values wouldn't change. So if I had 6 in here and I change the units of measure to bar absolute, that 6 would stay as 6. And that's just because we're in Excel land. We're limited to what we can do. So you need to be a lot more careful around units of measure and changing units once Capri sheets are open. You can, of course, say that is 6 bar absolute, and Capri will understand that is 6 bar absolute, not 6 bar gauge. You can see that value down there changed. So you can do that, but what it doesn't do, the other programs do, is we change the unit, it can't change that number there. So they're the main applications where we play about with units. You may wonder, well, what do I change it to? How do I know what the like meters per second? How do I type that in? Or bar gauge, bar A? Some are obvious, some maybe not so much. There is a little units converter here in the tools. So just move up to sign where that is. This is my PEL launcher. You've got tools here. That's where it sits. And I mean, this little application you can use wherever outside of the PEL programs. But say I was looking at volume, I want 1 meters cubed, and I want to know how much US gallons, then it will do that conversion in this little tool here. But also what this is quite useful for is if you're in volume, you could have a little look and see, well, what units are available. Not all of them will be there, but it'll give you a good idea of what units you can put in. So if you are in gallons, or maybe you want US barrels, so US BBL, you can find it, and then you can write that into your unit set. So it's a way of finding out that unit list relatively easily, or a good starting point at least. Hopefully that was useful for you. Thank you very much for listening, and until next time, goodbye.